cybersecurity, always with the same mission, to protect the connected world and enable the digital life for everyone.
Back. Thanks for coming back from the break. We still have some people coming in. It was good to hear from Gil yesterday. If you remember, at the beginning of his presentation, he shared his story about his family, his history with the company. His family now has 6 kids. And I wanted to tell you the story about, I live in Silicon Valley, California. A lot of billionaires there also. And a friend of mine who's a billionaire, I was talking with him the other day. I'm in no way a billionaire, I just happen to know someone who is. And he introduced me to his new wife. And this guy is 50 years old. His new wife, 21 years old. So I said to him, yeah, good. I said to him, you're 50, you're 21. How did you make this happen? I said, did you tell her that you're 30 or something? He said, no. I told her I'm 75. Okay, great. Welcome back. We have another hour or so of great content, starting with our Checkpoint researchers. So let's get things started again. Thank you.
Our next speakers are both bona fide cyber ninjas. They lead our very talented white hat teams in identifying vulnerabilities and in cutting-edge technologies. As experts on offensive security attack surfaces, they've produced dozens of research publications that affected millions of users worldwide. Even when they're off duty, all they see when they close their eyes are black terminals and green font. Yep. These guys are the real deal. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Checkpoint's own Yaniv Balmas and Oded Vanunu.
Good morning. What an introduction.
Hello.
Thank you, everyone. So, Yaniv, what are we doing here?
I'm not so sure. They told us we need to come here on stage and talk a bit about checkpoint research.
Yeah, but
we only have 15 minutes to do
no,
it.
it's less, Yaniv.
Yeah.
So, who is the honorary? Who is managing that?
I think Moti is
Okay,
yeah.
Moti, we need to talk to you later. But okay, so let's move on. So, let's talk about checkpoint research.
Yeah.
So, what's new about checkpoint research?
Well, you know, for one, our logo is shiny and brand new.
Yeah, but the logo is amazing and new. But Yaniv, you know, we are now in the era that the cybersecurity landscape is the most aggressive now. Cyber nations spending billions of dollars on offensive security, creating cyber weapons every day, seeking for vulnerabilities. And cybercrime, they are really ninjas, so we are on a very offensive era. So.
Yeah.
What's new about checkpoint research?
Well, you're absolutely right. And you know, basically, checkpoint research is not a new thing. I mean, we've been doing this thing for ages. But we are now bigger and stronger, I think, than we've ever been. We're over 200 people that are doing exactly this thing.
Cyber warfare.
Yeah, and it's not only that, because as you said, the ecosystem changed a lot. And so our research needs to change a lot as well. You see, if until today we and the entire industry were very passive, we were sitting down looking for the attacks and then reacting, we can't continue that way.
No way, we need to start
fighting back.
And it means that we need to be proactive and active. And we are not waiting for the attacks to come to you guys. We are going after them. And this is the message that we want to give you today and share with you what we are really doing.
Right. And, you know, we said that this thing is a really huge operation today. And we want to take you guys and girls a bit to the backstage of it and explain, just in a nutshell, how do we actually do that.
So we have 4 pillars that bring everything on, the operation. So let's start talk about the pillars. So the first pillar is the observe, is the ground. We have global sensor network of thousands of sensors that are getting incidents every time, millions of log every hour. We have honeypots, we have avatar everywhere that's bringing all the malicious data so we can start see what we can do with that.
Right, and from this pillar, we have a lot of information. So we now have terabytes, over terabytes of information. It's kind of like finding a needle in a haystack. And of course, we need a lot of special analysts, specialists, machine learning algorithms, and all the ways that we can think of in order to get the actionable intelligence, the stuff that we can do with from this entire huge pile of data.
And once we have this malicious data, and you know that today the sophistication of the malicious data, because we are seeing fingerprints of nations, of cybercrime, so we need to enter the squad into the malicious, actionable thing. And then the squad is like ripping off the pieces of the malicious thing, and then we can take decisions if we need to go after them, or we need to wait, or we need to let it continue and seek another information. So these guys are inside the malicious application, and they are telling us what exactly we need to do.
Right, and of course, that all wouldn't make a lot of sense if we wouldn't be able to use this entire funnel in order to innovate, to find new ways that we can build new features to the products, improve our algorithms, find new ways to get new and unique information.
And today, it's all about training the algorithm, not only on cybersecurity, also on social media. So training the algorithm is the key here. Also, every pillar is training the algorithm, so in order that we will be one step ahead all the time.
absolutely.
So now, let's understand a little bit about the professions of the research. So we need to understand the entire attack vectors, the entire surface of the malicious actor are entering. So let's share with you a little bit about the professions that we have in the research.
Yeah, so we have a lot of specialties in checkpoint research, but let's just talk about just a few of them. So one is obviously mobile. We all know mobile, and we need specialists who knows everything about mobile, from the application layer and down to the hardware and embedded levels.
Web. This is the gate today for every infrastructure. Serverless, container, APIs. We need to be there. We need to understand the connection, the logic. The software today is free, but the logic of the API is broken. So this is the gate, and we need to understand it perfectly.
IoTs. IoTs are everywhere. Yeah, from your teapots to your toasters to another whole bunch of useless technologies that are connected to the internet. But you know, these technologies can very easily be used as a pivot point for attackers to come into your networks from somewhere you wouldn't expect. So we need specialists who knows everything about these huge ecosystems and very diverse devices and embedded devices and technologies and everything within it.
Operating systems. Every operating system, different structure, kernels, user space, different APIs. We need to understand how everything is playing together, where they are coming from, what weaknesses they are finding on operation systems. So we need to be on top of all this data.
Right, and the last is not specifically a technology, but it involves the dark web. So we have a large operation of people that are actually interacting with the attackers. They are sitting in the forums, they are talking to them, they are pretending to be them so that they could feed us with very unique data that will allow us to do our job much, much better than before.
So how was 2018? It was crazy from my perspective.
Yeah.
This last cyber landscape got crazy. Nation got crazy. Cybercrime got crazy.
Yeah.
So what we did?
So we did so many things, and it's actually a challenge for us to try and tell you this in the time that we have left. But you've all, or most of you at least, seen Dorit's presentation yesterday. So we know that you can consume like 100 slides in 40 minutes. But we at Checkpoint Research like to take this one level higher. So here's for you 40 slides in just roughly under 50 seconds.
So this year was crazy year. We uncovered so much things, so much malicious activities, so much interest, so much technologies that cybercrime are using in our nation state. But now we want to take you to the backstage of only 3 stories because we have less than 8 minutes. So let's start. Okay, so let's start with our first story, which is Fortnite. So Fortnite, it's not a game. It's a huge infrastructure, 200 million people, 80 million people playing a day, most of them kids. The infrastructure allows you to exchange cryptocurrency. And then in 2018, we got a lot of intelligence that this infrastructure is being exploited and being abused. So we started to dig down in this infrastructure. And after a few weeks, we uncovered the entire flow that was allowing the malicious actor to enter to this system and start attacking users. The flow that we saw was on the authentication methods, the token method. And when I said before that web is the infrastructure or is the gate for every infrastructure, then this is what we're going to see in the future. You will see stealing of accounts, stealing of a token, accounts worth a lot of money. So let's see a demo of it. Yes.
are you here? Where are you? Dad, meet me at the clock. Mom, I'm playing.
Yeah, such an exciting video.
Yeah, I like the music.
Okay, next research project we want to talk to you about, we called it Faxploit. So fax, you all know it, and usually it's used within this kind of all-in-one printers machines. And our research tried to look at this as a security black box, let's call it. And this black box has interfaces. On one side, it has interfaces like Wi-Fi, Ethernet, that connects this to the internal network, external network, basically to the world. And on the other side, it has this nice little telephone interface that connects it to, well, the 1970s, I guess. Yeah, and if you remember that at the end of the day, these things are really nothing but computers. I mean, they have CPUs and operating systems and memories and everything. So we imagine to ourselves what will happen if an attacker sitting somewhere in the world, equipped with his victim's phone number, fax number, and will be able to send a malicious fax and take over this thing. If he will be able to take over the printer, he will be able to easily pivot out of any one of these interfaces and reach the internal network, so effectively creating a bridge between the internal network and external network using nothing but a telephone line. This is an amazing concept, and we've made it happen. So here's a video showing you exactly how we do this. This is our attacker computer. All you need is a $5 modem you purchase in Amazon and to run a Python script. And this is our target poor fax machine. And as you see, the fax is being sent, and it's being processed.
But Yaniv, you know, faxes are on hospitals, schools, governments,
faxes
everywhere.
are absolutely everywhere today. And as you see, a fax is received from an evil attacker. And that's it. Once it goes into printing stage, we now have complete control over the printer. It's ours. We can do whatever we want with it. But of course, we want to show how we can leverage this to get into the internal network. So our malicious fax actually included Eternal Blue, the leaked NSA exploit. And once a computer is connected to the network, it will immediately be exploited. So you will see a calculator popping in a second. And that basically means that we can run whatever we want on this computer. And basically, we breach the entire network using the phone line.
Drones. Okay, we have millions of drones out there. DJI, which is the biggest vendor of drone, excellent vendor for the professional and for the consumers. Every government today is using drones for the facilities, and users are using it. So we started to understand that this kind of data on the sky can be used cybercrime. We started to get intelligence that it's really happening. And also we understood that the United States government decided to ban out all DJI drones. So we started to look inside the drones and the infrastructure. And we found out that the DJI has amazing infrastructures. And one of the amazing infrastructure is an application that's called FlightHub, which gives you the ability to automate drones. You can take out like hundreds of drones and give them like different missions all around 24/7, and you can control it. And then we started to look inside what's going on about, again, the authentication processes, the APIs there, and we found many race conditions that can be bypassed easily, and we understood that that was the method that cybercrime used in order to take account. And once you are taking account, you have full control on the information, and in some cases, you have also full control on the drones. So now imagine what power you have on the sky when you can control drones, millions of drones out there. So let's see the demo.
basically all we have for today, and our time is done now. But if you want to see more of our work, feel free to visit our blog here or follow our Twitter account. And also, we have a very nice breakout session for you in the Hackers Expo. So please come and visit us. We have a lot of cool things going on.
And last thing I want to repeat and say that, again, the main message that we want to give you is that we are not waiting anymore for the data. We are coming after the malicious activity, and we will go and see it before it will come to you guys. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, guys.
Our next speakers are both colleagues and friends. One of them served 5 years in the Israeli Defense Forces Intelligence Unit before founding Vanadium Raw Analysis. So you can bet his part of the cyber talk is going to be intelligent. He now leads Check Point's R&D teams in threat prevention. The other speaker likes to live life epically, and in less than one 12-hour period, jumped out of a plane with Israeli paratroopers, drank wine at an ancient Roman fortress, and was mistakenly picked out as a spy by airport facial recognition software. His part of the cyber talk is sure gonna be fun. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Check Point's VP of Threat Prevention, Neatsun Ziv, and Check Point Security Strategist, Doyle.
Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for coming to our conference today, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor and a pleasure for me to speak to you today. And I have two or several very important, unusual, and slightly scary questions for you. Would you sacrifice the lives of 5 people to save 2? Or would you allow 2 people to die to save 5? These are the questions that MIT's Department of Robotics Computers and their Department of Philosophy teamed up on in a survey across 200 countries, gathering 40 million data points to solve the dilemma of when a driverless car is facing an unavoidable crash and needs to decide who should live and who should die. Think about that, a machine making ethical decisions. We at Check Point are teaching machines to make security decisions which also impact real-world events. But more about that and the MIT study in a moment. For those of you unfamiliar with this concept, it originated in the 1950s by British philosopher Philippa Ruth Foot, based on the ethics of Aristotle, and was immortalized in the now famous trolley thought experiment, which goes as follows with an artificial intelligence twist. A state-of-the-art railroad bot is currently inspecting the tracks which shuttle miners through a mine in trolleys. While at a control switch which can change the track from one to another direction, the robot recognizes 4 miners in a mine which has lost use of its brakes and steering mechanism and is facing certain death by crashing into a wall. But if diverted to another track, would kill only a singular miner working there, saving the lives of the 4. So, facing the control switch, the robot needs to decide whether to divert the trolley to the single miner or not. Right, ladies and gentlemen, what would you do? What decision would you have the artificial intelligence make? Let's say this car is carrying a family of 5, and as you see, faces an unavoidable obstacle. But if diverted to a secondary lane, would kill 2 innocent pedestrians, saving the lives in the family of the car. Now, by show of hands, who would make the car continue on its path, crashing into the obstacle? Let me see, by show of hands, who would allow the computers to go forward? Just a very small amount. Okay, thank you. Now, who would divert the car to the secondary lane, killing the 2 innocent pedestrians? A lot more. I've got a question for you now. What if one of those pedestrians was a child or a friend? What if that car was carrying thieves who had stolen the car? How do these new pieces of information change the ethics of the situation for you? Now, the MIT study used the same premise as the trolley thought experiment, but added additional variables such as choosing between animals and humans, a large group of humans, people of different ethnic origin, the young versus the old, and so on. What surprised the researchers is that the answers varied greatly depending upon the region of the world you were from. In other words, ethics are not universal. Here's just two examples. If you are a pedestrian in Japan, Norway, and Singapore, those countries place greater emphasis on saving you. But if you're a passenger in a vehicle, you had greater emphasis on being safe in the countries of China, Estonia, and Taiwan. But we're talking about driverless car technology and artificial intelligence making decisions. And from this one survey, we found 40 million different data points. And that doesn't even include the driver safety data points. As an example, has that pedestrian safely moved out of the way for me to pass? What if the pedestrian suddenly stops, picks up a text from their phone, and turns around? There needs to be some predictive analytics in the software. Ladies and gentlemen, all of these data points need to be aggregated into a zero tolerance for false positives, or my car will never leave my driveway. It's a similar challenge with your cybersecurity. Too many disparate technologies simply become blinking lights in your network set in detect-only mode for fear of false positives grinding your traffic to a standstill. We understand this at Checkpoint. It takes courage, it takes faith in the vendors you've chosen, reducing those number of vendors so that they can protect you. To earn your trust, last year at Checkpoint, we made a massive leap forward with our artificial intelligence, essentially predicting malicious intent through the work ethic of hackers. We call this the DNA of malware, and here to tell you about it is our Vice President of Threat Prevention, Neatsun.
Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you.
Well,
wait up.
Thank you. But in order to understand really how it becomes this way, I think we should start with the why. And the why of this is basically, why are the bad guys doing those kinds of things? How can we learn about them? Now, what you see here is basically a list that we found on the dark web with price lists. You can actually see that you can buy an SSH route to somebody's server for 3 Bitcoin. Today it's about $50,000. That's not a big price to pay. But this is consumer grade. Let's look on the high-end things. What you see here is a data link that we found for one of the largest banks. And you see here that for $250,000, they will give you access for know your information, anti-money laundering, and 12 terabytes of data from this bank. But they also write that they can give you access to the servers that they've broken into. Now think about it, that somebody has a remote access to a server that contains all of the bank's secret information, the things that you do not want to simply get out to the internet. And you would think, oh, this is a very unique case. But no, it's not a very unique case. You can see so many different cases on a weekly basis being published. Things like Yahoo's breach containing 3 billion indicator of compromise and personal identifying information. You can find them their financial information. You can find them health record. And all of those things on a weekly basis get to be in the news. So I want to introduce you to who are the guys behind the scenes that are actually making those kind of things. So we divide them into 3 different categories. The first category, script kiddies. Now the script kiddies are there to basically show their abilities. They're just in the beginning of the way in the cybercrime. They would usually take things that you can find on GitHub or things that are already known and will simply reuse them. So that's the first category. The second category is what we call the cyber syndicates. These guys are about making money, big money. A good crew can do $100,000 a week simply by running scams. And we'll talk about how they do it. And the third is national grade. Now, the national grade is usually not about making money. It's about getting access to confidential systems, getting information, shutting down power plants, doing massive damages that can reflect on the political ecosystem. But to understand this, you need to understand what are the actual tools that these guys are using to make it happen. So let's focus again on these cyber gangs. you can see that over the past year, basically ransomware went down, and in return, crypto miners went up. Now, this means that instead of getting to the place where they ask you to do something, and as an end user, they decided to go for another monetization system. They said, we'll simply tap to your system, we'll leech on them, we'll steal the computational abilities, and simply mine some cryptocurrencies. That's great. Most of the people I meet will say, you know what, I'm not that worried about it. It's less worse than ransomware. But it's not, because these are the remote access tools that allow hackers also to see what's on your server and access your data. So the question becomes, how do we know all of this? And I'll tell you exactly. First of all, you've seen here a lot of CPR, checkpoint research. So on a weekly basis, we publish new things, new indicator, new things that we found about how to make those things work. How do the bad guys utilize all of those breaches to make things actually happen? And the second is because we see a lot of data. We are talking about 10 trillion, with a T, trillion, access logs per day. We see 86 billion, with a B, indicator of compromise per day. 25,000 malwares that we see per day that are 0 days, and 7,000 out of them are not known to anybody else. You can't find them in VirusTotal, you will not see them in any repository. Those are unique findings to Checkpoint because we see a huge, huge portion of the market. Now, when you see this large amount of data on a constant basis, and you keep looking on it, you can find different patterns. And as you see those patterns, you start to understand that it's not flat. It's not just malwares. It's not one thing that is repeating itself. It is actually different categories. So the first category is what we call the variants. It's basically the same malware all over again, but they would change something small. They would repack it, they would change a small bit, they would change the hash, something very small, but it is the same thing. Those are the things that everybody already knows how to catch. But the problem starts with what happens when you add new content into it. When you go to the place where you simply add new command and control center, new protocol and things like that. And this is where you come to the new generation. These are the really scary things. When you go to the new scary things, all the previous technologies simply couldn't catch that. And this year we said we want to challenge this and face this article. So this year we are introducing our malware DNA capabilities. Our malware DNA capabilities allows you basically to see DNA of the hacker. So if a hacker already did something once and used this technology, we know how to break it down into the smallest components and understand the assembly within it. So if somebody used a malware and then simply added a new functionality on top of it, these things will be caught by our system and detected as a 0 days just because he used part of the code that somebody already used once before as part of his malware. Meaning we can classify and say this is a new evolution, new generation based on something that we've seen before. Now this means that for a hacker now to penetrate those kinds of systems, he would simply need to write everything from scratch. He will need to write everything from the beginning. He cannot reutilize things that like he used to do. All of this, of course, comes with a full intelligence briefing saying where we've seen it before, what is the impact, how can you take use of it, what kind of parts of my industry are also infected by this, and it gives you everything that you need to know. But what about the really new things, the new things that we hadn't seen before, a new threat concept? For example, a few weeks ago, we've seen a new vulnerability in a .contact file. How do you deal with it? How would you deal with the first time that you see a screensaver being sent in the mail? Those are the things that we want to deal and are dealing with right now. In order to explain it, I want to tell you a personal story. So my home was broken into a few years back. When the police came to do the forensics, I've asked them, how come somebody broke into my steel door? And they say, no, they didn't break into your steel door. What they broke into is the cylinder. This is the place where you actually put your key inside of it. And I ask, how come? And they say, the cylinder, the piece itself, this little piece that costs a few tens of dollars, this small piece is vulnerable to what we call bumping. Bumping, for those of you who do not know, is a great way to break any lock. And there's a break locking seminar here. But if you wanted to know more about bumping, you can actually see a 6-minute video in YouTube that will explain to you how to pick cheap locks. But basically, the security posture that I decided for my home when I bought that cheap cylinder was taken a few years back. It means that our cybersecurity posture is the evolution of the decisions that we've made with the knowledge that we had at a single moment and the execution from that moment going on. It means that we are limited to the tools and knowledge at the moment that we got to the decision. And this is a problematic thing because we do not know everything. We publish 40 different articles a year, but you can't get all of this information. And this is where we want to start our journey towards the 6th generation of cybersecurity protection, allowing us to basically understand the parallel of driverless car. How can we develop systems for cybersecurity that are completely autonomous? And the idea comes from having an artificial intelligence that sees all the traffic that we see, all the configurations, and tweaking things behind the scenes for you, allowing you to face new kinds of threat concepts, even if you hadn't seen them before. And this is the future that we are going to, allowing you to have reaction without you needing to know all the details, tweaking things behind the scenes without a human interaction, allowing fast reaction before anybody else can do those kinds of things. So to sum up, I want you to take 2 things from this lecture. The first one is once you're using technologies like malware DNA, every attacker that wants to penetrate your defense systems will need to work 10 times harder and write everything from scratch. And the second is as we're evolving towards the new generation of cybersecurity, we want you to do less and for us to do more heavy lifting using artificial intelligence from the cloud. Eddie.
And ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you about 155 people who are extremely grateful that one man chose this exact course of action, chose to reduce the noise from many blinking lights down to one machine, one architecture, one system. Who are those 155 people? There are 155 people who are alive today thanks to Captain Sully Sullenberger. US Airways Flight 1549, the Miracle on the Hudson, where Captain Sullenberger heard from air traffic control that he could safely land his plane back at LaGuardia Airport after receiving a double-engine failure from an unprecedented bird strike. This was his zero-day moment, never prepared for, never simulated, never foreseen. And yet, with the courage of a lion, trusting in his one machine, he landed his plane in a river, saving all 155 people on board and countless thousands had he crashed into the Manhattan skyline. My friends, from myself, from Neatsun, from your Checkpoint family, we wish you courage this year in your cybersecurity decisions. Good luck, and thank you for coming.
Our next speaker first joined Checkpoint in 1996 as a Microsoft devotee. He came up with the concept of the groundbreaking product Provider One and traveled the world spreading the Checkpoint story. After a short break from packets and hackers, he founded Dome 9, only to rejoin the Checkpoint family in 2018. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Zohar Alon.
Good morning, Vienna. Hi, everyone. I'm Zohar. Very, very happy to be here. For those of you who didn't hear the announcement, I joined Checkpoint many, many years ago in 1996. Had the pleasure of being involved in a great product called Provider One. Who have ever used this marvelous piece of technology? Please raise your hand. Yeah! They took some time off from Checkpoint. As you know, Checkpoint can be a very intense career. And I'm happy to be back after Checkpoint acquired Dome 9 4 months ago, lead the cloud efforts for the company. And I want to talk to you about innovation. And I want to stress that innovation starts with people like us, the power users, the people that experiment new things, that they try this new app, this new cloud service. And us as security practitioners, those same people challenge. And so those people don't just foster innovation, or they challenge us to allow new things to happen, and they make our world move forward. And cloud is no different. We're going to talk a lot about cloud. We are talking a lot about cloud. We have 8 amazing breakout sessions about cloud. And cloud started the same way. Started by people wanting more choices, people wanting more options to use things faster in an agile way. And those people challenge us. And when you foster innovation, you see a lot of choices. You get more choices. And people pick with their behaviors. They essentially define what we're going to deal with just by voting, just by using the great technologies. And it's not uncommon that people will pick the shiny, the fast, the speedy, the agile things that make them happy. Who wants to use an FTP server ever in his life again, right? So I don't. Same goes for cloud architectures. Cloud architectures also present innovation. We could use traditional network modules when we design our new applications. But before we get to understand them, the world introduced containers, new concepts around how we build applications, new concepts around networks and microservices technologies. And before we could even spell Docker, this thing happened, serverless. Serverless architecture where you can build the same amazing apps, the same amazing things, without even using traditional networks anymore, without even using servers, using functions, let them run somewhere along in this great thing called cloud. And I can guarantee you that while we sit here, there are people, researchers, people that foster this innovation we are talking about, that are thinking about this new great architecture that we as security practitioners and we as CIOs and decision makers will need to guarantee to support. Because remember, they decide for us. They decide what they're going to use, and we need to enable it. And the one thing I can guarantee is that if you're lucky, you just have those 3 architectures to deal with. Probably you also have some legacy stuff, so it's not dealing with just one architecture, it's dealing with everything. Now, how do we secure all that mess? How do we, as security leaders, how we as an industry, allow the people that make the choices to enjoy as successful executions of their plan, the agility with the marketing apps, the cool innovation that happens when we allow them access to technology and provide it in a secure manner to our environment. Now, I want to go back with you to what is that we try to defend in the cloud? What are the things that all the great speakers before me talked about, what attackers are doing? So what do hackers really want? And in the cloud, they want just 2 things. Either all your data or all your infrastructure or all of the above. And if I get your data assets, I can use it to blackmail you. I can encrypt it and ask you for ransom. Or I can just destroy it because I couldn't find any better thing to do with it. Or I can look at your infrastructure, look at your servers and services, and maybe mine Bitcoin, maybe launch another attack, maybe do the stampede that Maya talked about. This is what we have. And we used to have the network attack vector. This was probably this great company was built around protecting that vector, innovated around that. We also have the identity vector. Instead of hacking to your network in a miraculous way, I can just attack your head of IT, your head of DevOps, one of your key engineers, use their identity, their credentials, their laptop to get to the data and the assets. But the cloud presents another element, a control plane. This magical place where everything is configured. Whereas everything is configured, where everything is set, your storage encryption policy, your storage exposure policy, the ciphers you use on your load balancers, the network, the ins and outs of your VPCs, and many, 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 many more settings around containers, serverless, and everything of the above. Your key management systems, your certificate management, your DNS even, everything is controlled by this control plane. And if you've been following the news over the last 2.5, 3 years, you could see that some of the organizations out there were not as fortunate in protecting their cloud control plane. And it's whether it's they forgot storage, where they left an exposed database out there, or they just forgot embedded credentials in an app or in a GitHub post, because remember, we enable innovation. And Gartner had this I like to call it an understatement, saying that just 95% of the breaches are going to be a result of a user mistake. This is an unprecedented situation for us to deal with. It means that if we do what we need to do as an industry, as security leaders, as decision makers in our organizations, we can make sure not to be on this list. A lot of those attacks are opportunistic. A lot of those attacks happen because people didn't behave well. And what I'm going to offer you is a way to think about it going forward so your name will not be there next time for the wrong reasons on the front page of the Financial Times. So how do we beat the hacker, but still empower our developers, empower the cool people that make all our greatness around us? And I'm going to offer you an easy to follow, what we call a cloud security contract. And the cloud security contract I want to describe to you is something that you can very quickly understand and you can explain it to your organization. It has 3 main pillars. It starts by always leading with a threat prevention mindset. We have the best threat prevention technology. We have to segment the network. We have to try to keep the threats out. We have to use the threat prevention mindset. And this is where we start. There's no optionality here. We have to do it. This is the front, the basic pillar that covers our application, no matter which cloud we are. And then build a contract, an understanding with the development teams that sometimes are in a different time zone, sometimes they're in all the time zones, and provide them with a clear guidance of the things that they need to do and the things that they mustn't do. And then we talk about what happens if they do the thing that they shouldn't do. And then realize that because you're going to have production environments, but development environments and testing environments, and some applications are internal, some external, not all environments are created equal, and you can use risk-based thinking, risk-based mindset on how do we deal with bad behavior in the cloud. Now this is our checkpoint threat prevention architecture, our blueprints for the cloud, essentially allowing you to build a northbound and southbound, protecting each of your applications, segmenting between applications, so minimizing the blast radius, dealing with things that what will happen or how we contain threats inside the application, and how we make sure that everything flowing in, back to and out of our applications is properly analyzed from a network perspective. Then we connect it with a cloud security contract, and easy to use based on a policy language we all know and hopefully love called English, and allows us to set very sophisticated rules by just stating them, writing them like you search in Google. And this is something that you can present to your development teams, and you tell them, look, if you behave well, it means that all storage buckets should be encrypted. In this case, if you want a storage bucket to be publicly accessible, you need to add this tag. Remember, we talked about users making mistakes. Most of the mistakes happen because, the default setting is that it's public, or I want it to be public, but I forgot to add this tag, for example. I can show this to my development team. I can even teach them to validate their own environments, so me as a CISO, as a security leader, as a cloud security team, don't have to deal with this too much. And this is exactly how our policy language looks like. And we can support today over 2,000 checks just like that, and you can build thousands of much more sophisticated checks based on our technology. And remember when we talked about risk-driven action, in a development environment, when there is a mistake, when somebody is outside the limits of the policy, for example, they use TLS or SSL 1 instead of TLS 1.2, In a development environment, I can send a notification. I can start a process telling the developer, look, you have a dev environment, you made this mistake, please fix it. In a production environment, this doesn't fly. The cost of a mistake to you, to us, is not something we can bear. So what we offer you is another level of active remediation. We find this storage bucket, or we find this wrong cipher on a load balancer, we can automatically update it to TLS 1.2. If it's a cipher, we can quarantine an instance, we can disable a user, we can do whatever, as anything that we want, as far as your imagination it takes you. But the idea is that you control the behavior. We are not chasing developers anymore when we talk about production environments. And because the cloud applications travel from development to staging to production, I can guarantee that with proper education, you will not have to deal with those things very, very quickly. And thankfully, we have over several thousands of organizations that use these great technologies that can vouch for that. So how do we kind of summarize the defense that we offer cloud applications now under the Checkpoint CloudGuard family? So for the network attack vector, we have two great technologies, CloudGuard IaaS and CloudGuard Dome9 network security module. Those two technologies combined together make sure that everything in your network is accountable. Only relevant elements talk with the other relevant elements. There's no open connectivity. Lateral movement is almost impossible if you use these technologies properly on the network. Oops. For the identity, we have a cool technology called IAM Safety. IAM Safety allows me to give my developers a mobile app that allows them to authorize themselves when they want to do dangerous things like, for example, wiping a storage bucket, changing keys on the KMS, deleting DNS records, or wiping an entire database. This makes sure that if somebody compromised my head of DevOps, your head of cloud operations, their laptop or their identity, they will not be able to use it to get back to us and to ask us for ransom to get back access to our data. And for the cloud control plane, we have the amazing compliance engine that we built, the one that is employing the cloud security contract as we've shown. And this essentially allows us to fend off any type of attacks with a great checkpoint prevention mindset going into the future. Now, while we have this virtual, super powerful wall around our assets, sometimes it's not enough to make you feel better. You want to get another level of assurance. And for that, we'll announce next month a new member to the CloudGuard family called Magellan. Magellan is a technology that essentially feeds, off all the flow logs, the audit trail, the geo-IP data, malicious, the threat cloud feed, everything into our big data analytics system to make sure that only the good things that happen in your cloud, or only good things happen in your cloud, and if something suspicious happens there, to let you know and be able to respond and maybe even remediate based upon it with full automation. And I'm happy to say that as we have so many organizations trusting the Checkpoint CloudGuard family today. A lot of them would be happy to talk to you, share with you their stories. We have some public references that essentially were partners in us in building this concept in an area that did not exist 5 years ago. And with that, I'm happy to invite you to join the second day of our cloud breakout. We have 4 amazing sessions led by my team, essentially allowing you to learn, get up to speed, and see what Checkpoint has to offer. We have so many other things coming around, containers, serverless, and other great technologies that you want to take care. And I'm happy, and I hope to be many, many years with you and take you through our cloud journey into the future. Thank you very much.
All right. We're down to our last presentation of the morning, so hang with us. We've got about 8 minutes left, and there's going to be plenty of food for lunch. The next presenter is the winner of the 2020 Cyber Innovation Challenge. They were chosen by you. You voted by sitting in on the 2020 presentations, and they got the most votes. So it turns out that they're an Austrian company, even though this was a Europe-wide competition. It turns out that they actually are a longtime partner of Checkpoint, about 25 years, almost as long as the company's existed. They've grown from when we first started, and they first started, to about 70 people. So congratulations to them for winning the competition. From Bacher Systems, let me introduce Mr. Marcus Ziegmuth. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. As Peter said, we are a long-time Checkpoint partner, 25 years to be exact. So we know Checkpoint from version 1.0. We already have a floppy disk reading Checkpoint 1.0. So we know Checkpoint in and out, but not only Checkpoint. We specialize in providing hybrid cloud, data center infrastructure, data analytics, and security solutions to our customers. But today, I won't talk about myself or my company too much. I want to ask you a question. The question is, how do you approach security? How do you reach out and get the best for you that you can protect yourself? But the more important question is, do you really protect your customers? Your internal customers, but also your end customers, the ones that bring you the money. There are different strategies to achieve security. Maybe you can act like a hedgehog, to curl down and hope that your spines are pointy enough that an attacker will not bite you, bite the next victim. Maybe you buy the biggest and baddest guns you can find in cybersecurity. Maybe you try to find the silver bullets that may or may not be out there to protect yourself. Or you might try to put your head in the sand and hope for the best, that everything bad will eventually go away. Admit, not the best way to do it. So all of these approaches have some obvious flaws. And I guess, and my deepest opinion is, the biggest flaw is looking at yourself only, trying to protect only yourself. So why is this a problem? There are always assets you want to protect. Your infrastructure, your cloud security, your endpoints, all of the things you think about. But those may not be the things an attacker wants from you. Maybe he has some different things in mind. But to reach his goals, he uses stepping stones. These stepping stones can be social media, IoT devices. We heard a lot today and yesterday. So only in the middle, in this short overlap, is where you're really protected, where all of these things come together. So that's a little bit of a problem, because do you know what attackers want? Do they want money? Do they want information? Do they want to just unplug you? You really don't know. So, what if, and those are big ifs, what if you knew what was going on outside? What if you knew what assets were at risk? What if you knew who is the target? And the most important question of all, what if you realize that your customers are at risk? The ones that trust you, that give you the money, that give you the trust. And you could protect them too. You could do some innovative things to get in advance and protect them and warn them of emerging threats. So let me tell you a short story. A story that happened to me, that happened to one of my favorite customers. I think he's in the audience here tonight, or today. This happened to be a bank that's also an insurance company. And this bank had many, many security measures in place. They had firewalls, they had sandboxing, they had nearly the whole checkpoint portfolio already in place. But what all of these measures, as good as they are, what they did not show was what was going and happening outside of their field of vision, out of their realm, outside of their cognitive measures. So what we did, we reached out to Checkpoint, and together we performed a threat intelligence POC. And this POC basically covered everything that's normally invisible to the naked eye, everything that's happening outside of my field of vision, under the radar, everything that's happening on the dark sides of the internet. So what we found only in a couple of days, and I'm not talking about weeks or so, only after 3 days, we found hijacked mobile banking apps. Imagine this is a bank. A bank has many, many, many customers using mobile banking apps. When we found these banking apps got hijacked, got malware infected, re-uploaded to app stores, and customers were already using them. So it was directly threatening the bank's customers. We found VIPs on target lists from the legal department, from the financial department. And we found social media accounts that are not authorized, maybe fake. We found also phishing sites used to threaten customers and employees. So this was the moment of revelation for the customer. He could see the threats everywhere around him. He was suddenly aware of everything that was going on. So the insights we got from this were quite serious. The customer realized his security was focused just on protecting his internal workings, his internal resources, and not protecting his customers enough. And his customers were directly targeted. This was not a widespread, I take the shotgun and take a shot approach. His customers were directly targeted and at immediate risk. And it wasn't just a single incident. We found 3 of them in only a couple of days that we were able to take down in this POC, but there were many, many more to come. So to really protect your customer, you have to recognize these threats. You have to recognize them in advance and take countermeasures in advance. And that brings me to my key takeaway. Let security not end at your perimeter, at your cloud services, at your endpoints, at your mobile devices. Every technology we heard in the last couple of hours. Get the insights, get the information, get all you can gather to protect also your customers. Thank you.
Great job. Okay, so we're done for the morning. We have lunch right now. All the breakouts and so on start at 1:30. We'll be with you through the afternoon, and then many of you will be going home tonight. Thank you for being here. I've enjoyed being your MC, and we'll see you next year. Thank you very much. Have a great lunch.